Hello there, and welcome to Highlighting the Black. I'm your host, Livy Liv, and this is my interactional safe space for individuals swimming against the currents of systemic and societal constraints. Here, me and my guests focus on introducing dynamic dialogues as well as address social narratives that affect not only the opportunities, but the mental health, success, and culture of people of color. In result, leaving us equipped with a mindset to interrogate norms instead of complying with them, creating the opportunity to expand on our perspectives and build confidence in speaking on our endurances. Welcome to episode number 4. It is a pleasure to be here with you guys, and thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. I know I say that at the beginning of every episode, but for real though, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. So I hope you're all doing well and safe. Like I said, I say that every episode, but I am being dead serious. I hope you all are doing well and safe during this pandemic, today is a snowstorm. So I hope you all doing valid like salad, even though by the time you hear this, it won't be a snowstorm. But, and if you're going through some tough times right now, and have been, I just want to send you my love and my strength and perseverance your way. I hope this episode is giving you that time to separate from worry and into a different space. So welcome to the first episode of Know Us. So Know Us episodes are dedicated to placing language to sexually related experiences and trauma, with a heavy importance on self-expression, acceptance, and growth through embracing our stories and the stories of others, finding the similarities that bring us together, giving the power to our voices, the power to allowance and vocal freedom without the negative consequences, like losing loved ones or your job, facing social judgment or abuse, and honestly, the list goes on. I promise that by giving you or giving our speakers here the option to be anonymous, using voice distortion and no shown identity on any of my platforms, it is straight up just me, you, and my mics. I think it'll be super valuable to my audience, and really the target audience that I have here on Highlighting the Black, because yes, people in the hood, yes, people of color do go through sexual trauma. We do go through, the need for resources to go through the sexual traumatic healing. And honestly, we don't have a lot of safe spaces that we can actually talk about these things and not feel like we're being judged or having to lose people, having to go through all of these crazy things. Just being honest with ourselves, just by being honest with our stories and just wanting the safety and the comfort that we deserve. So this is really to be that place, it can be helpful for so many people. And I want to emphasize that every story is welcomed here. That quote, your story can be the story of many others. And I used that quote before, and I will probably use it again, by Mickey Kendall. Whether that be from just uncomfortable situations, like at work, on the train, at home, summer camp, school, to harassment, gaslighting, rape, groping, toxicity in a relationship, coercion. I welcome it all here. Also that these episodes are created on a received basis by the individuals who are comfortable and willing enough to speak on the show. If you know someone who has gone through something I've listed, or or anything related, or is still going through things like that, or who you think honestly could really use this opportunity, don't hesitate to contact me on any of my platforms, the same ones in the description of my episodes, my email, my Instagram. So let's get started. In episode 2, I talk about love and history, and I reference a journal entry in a journal that I used to get me started on that journey. And if this is your first time here, during quarantine, I grabbed an old book of mine and I wrote the prompt in the first page: things I was never able to acknowledge, understand, say, write, do, or accept. And this was a prompt for the whole book. of whatever entry I wrote, whatever I wrote in this book. That was a prompt. And one of the first things that I wrote down were these specific moments that I thought I moved on from, which ended up developing into what my relationship with love, sex, and trust has always been basically my whole life. But the trust I gave myself and the trust I gave the pen and the paper really was a breakthrough, because the hesitation and the fear before you actually either say or write anything down is probably the hardest part. Like, and honestly, I think it is one of the hardest parts. Is that and the consequences, honestly, and the frustration of like lack of memory, etc. But that was a big thing. So I allowed myself to find the beginning steps of what acceptance and forgiveness and freedom really looks like, but really what it feels like, because you really never know what it feels like until you feel it, and it's unexplainable. Like you can't explain it to anybody else because it's so unique to you. But it's really important to let go of all that baggage, because to me before and to society, acceptance is really just moving on, like forgetting and ignoring your traumas, demeaning what has impacted you. And in all reality, that is probably the most unhealthiest things you can do for yourself, because you are stunting your growth. You are pushing aside what you probably don't even realize is impacting you every single day. What's triggering little things. So my story is going to be spoken on to you by a mashup of what I've written in the journal with some of the pieces I wrote from a book I've been writing for a long time now that includes the story as well and expands on that. I would say a warning, there's a bit of, it's not vulgar, it's not like so much explicitity, whatever you want to say. I kind of like cut that out for the podcast. I figure I can put like a blog post or something like that. I could just put the story up there. It'll be more explicit. But I urge you to stay along with me. If it does get a little uncomfortable, of course, take a breather. If you want to take a break, no problem. But I urge you to stay along with me because, these stories, quote, can easily be dismissed if someone doesn't put the language to it. That's a quote by Jason Reynolds. So when I was 6, my dad was going through a divorce with my stepmother, who is happily and amazingly still in my life. And throughout that transition, he moved from, Queens to the Bronx, back to Parkchester, where I grew up and where his parents were and where my mother still lived. And he moved like literally across the street from my house, my mom's house, and like 2 blocks away from his parents' house. On every weekend, me and my brother would go to his house because we both have separate moms, but on the weekends we'd be together with my dad, our dad. So throughout those weekends, from like transitioning from Queens to the Bronx, he was like renovating the apartment, and he'd bring me and my brother to our grandparents' house in Parkchester, his parents' house, where they had their 2 sons, a dog and a cat, whatever. And her sons were both 12 and 16. And I looked up to my uncles. I was a tomboy for a lot of my childhood, so I looked up to them for like trends and lingo and fashion, whatever. Vaughn was 12, and he started molesting me around that transition. And a lot of people will kind of discount the fact that it's molesting because he's 12, but at the same time, I was 6. So, at 12 years old, I knew not to do anything to a 6-year-old. But that's just me. The first time I was sleeping in my grandparents' room, and my grandmother's room, my grandparents' room. That kind of became like my sanctuary space because I can just be alone. I can watch Disney, Hannah Montana all day, and relax, really. And I kind of like just woke up to like him behind me. It was a very new feeling. I would best explain it by like a cold chill that like came from like my scalp all the way to my toenails, and it felt different. I was scared. I was concerned, but I also knew I should feel safe because whoever this person was definitely was a family member in the house. It wasn't my grandfather. It wasn't my brother. It had to be my uncles, and I thought I had to feel safe. I was frozen So he'd rub on me, and by the end, you know, when all the sticky wetness would drip down my lower back and into my 6-year old underwear, I was in ice, literally, until I heard the door shut when he left. I stayed there straight and frozen until I got the courage enough to slowly get off the bed to my grandmother's dresser, find some tissue, hopefully, and dry up. And if there wasn't tissue, good question. Well, I pull my panties up and call it a day because I didn't know. I didn't want to leave the room. I thought I'd get in trouble. I didn't understand really. I didn't even know what the hell it was. I just didn't know. I didn't know. I'm sick. I never knew what this was. And at the time, I was going through a lot of UTIs too, so I'm sure that was probably the reason why. So months went by, and every time I went back, every weekend, I knew what to expect at this point. His routine stayed exactly the same. He'd come in. Even before he came in, I made sure to face the wall. There were times I just wanted to watch TV, and times I really just wanted an uncle. So I'd make up these like excuses, and I'd be like, I act all playful and like happy or whatever, and like try to stall him and make his, just try to show him that I just wanted an uncle. I didn't want to do this, and this was not what I wanted to do. Even though he might have enjoyed it, but I didn't want that, So a year went by, and I was used to it. I became less resilient and confused, kind of just more like accepting of like, this is who I was supposed to be, like this is what I was meant to do. Kind of just be of usage, basically. I quit trying to escape. I never told anyone until I was 12. I told my mother, and I quite frankly, I never knew why I would tell anyone. He always acted the same, like nothing ever happened. So I did as well. I didn't want to ruin my relationship with my family. I was a very quiet kid. At least as I was getting older, I didn't tell anyone like usually how I felt if it was like something like that. I inhaled, a lot of pain and confusion and desperation and mixed feelings. I thought I was saving others and myself in some way or another, only to hope that one day someone would realize, notice or something. This became my normal. It's kind of like what came with spending time with my family. At least my dad's family specifically, not my mom's family, my dad's family. He was the first introduction to my unhealthy sexual fixations. At a certain point, he stopped because I guess he got older. I got a little older, and by older, I really just mean like 2 years. And I don't know. I stopped going over there as often because we didn't need to go over there as often, and I never went back. I stopped going in the room because at a certain point I was like, I'm not gonna go in the room anymore. If I don't want to do it, I'm not gonna go in the room, But it was hard because he'd still like try to get me in the room, whatever. And my grandparents just didn't pay much attention at all, like ever. They were alcoholics at the time. They probably still are now. I'm not really sure if that's the reason why they didn't give really a crap about what me and my 3-year-old brother were doing in the room by ourselves with 2 older boys. Not really sure, but that's not my place to find that answer. Really not my concern or my interest, honestly. My great grandfather lived in Ohio. He passed away now. Rest in peace to him. He was an amazing person. My dad would bring me and my brother over there occasionally to visit him. He had a cute little house with a wife, and he made the best grits in the whole entire world to visit him, right? And he would occasionally foster like boys. I don't really. He passed away. I never got to ask him or really have any answers to that, I guess. But at the time, this was like, I probably was like 8 or 8. had it been, yeah, I was like 7 or 8. He took in 2 foster boys, one of which enjoyed luring me to the upstairs room by ourselves. And, I lay on the bed. There was 2 beds, and I laid in one bed, put on like SpongeBob. I remember specifically we watched SpongeBob. I love SpongeBob. But he put it on, and he like gave me all the right reasons to feel comfortable and safe and to get off the bed and on the floor. I just remember his like sweaty skin like laying on top of mine, and his heavily filled stomach like push against my smaller body. And he was so much bigger than me. Like, I don't know if he was like 14. I don't know how old that kid was. But he just like literally just made out OD. Like, he like it was like forcefully like just kissing me, and like it was weird. So to me that was like, oh, he liked me, because that's just what I was used to, like, I don't know. I was young. I didn't know what the fuck. So to me, I was like, in the movies, it was like, oh, kissing is sex. That equals sex, like, and when movies, it was like, oh, sex equals love. Okay, so he's interested in me, kind of thing. He'd find the right moments to make me feel like, I was liked or to take an interest in. So like Vaughn, I saw myself beginning to look for that. And by that I mean like to withdraw my concern, because this was normal. And a lot of me really just felt dirty and ashamed, because it never happened to me except by my dad's side. And when I was at my mom's house, it just never happened. And that was never normal. So there was a lot of me that knew that this wasn't right and it wasn't okay. But soon the time came when that boy was sent away, and I was left again feeling confused and like ripped away from like another normal in a way. Even though Vaughn was like, he wasn't ripped away. I chose that in a way. But still, he was like, another kind of thing that was done. So then we take those summer trips down south, because my family's from the south, Atlanta and Alabama. And since me and my brother only seen the family there, during summers and certain summers, I guess after a while it was like every other summer, or reunions, we weren't close to them, especially like to the group of cousins. They were all closer because they all lived like near each other, and we were also like 2 of the youngest, as well as like 2 of the lightest complexion as well. So we definitely stuck out. And I was also one of the first females born on his side of the family. So there was a good amount of attention. A lot of like my cousins are males, and they're all a little older than me, or a lot older than me. And one of them grew particularly fond of me. Ian was 7 to 8 years older than me. He's around the same age as my uncle. He was successful, educated, a golf athlete, and admired by like the family. And by me, I guess, like due to the cycle of admiration for him. So the fact that he'd asked me for a kiss, or like made flirty comments, or tried to get me alone, was a thing I was supposed to be flattered by. Like, I thought I was supposed to be flattered by, because he was so like on a like level of like appreciation of the family, and that's something I always like admired. But what I realized though about Ian, what was different, is that like he would make like sexual flirtatious comments, or just flirting comments, like around my family, around my uncles, like literally like when they were there, like I would be in the room, like try to make like stupid comments, like as if it was like my turn or something. Like it was corny, and I just didn't get it, and it made me feel really, really uncomfortable and just embarrassed, honestly. Like, is this like a thing? Like, what is this? He definitely made out with me once or twice. It was coerced, and I just thought it was okay again, And mind you, he's a lot older than me. He's, I think, the same age as my uncle, a little older. I was around 7 to 9 at the time, around 7, 8. So for me, it was always like, did my dad ever notice? And why didn't he notice? But that's not really an answer I'd really care much for at this point. So through these writing initiatives, I've learned more about myself than I ever knew. and I come to face not only the actual experience, but the levels to it and why it's so important. Really dig into like how that has affected every other part of my life. Because now you know where to grow from. Now you know what to change. Now you know who I really am and who I thought I was. The one important factor in my life, or in anyone's, in human and animal existence in general, sex was taught to me in an unhealthy way. When I was taught how to ignore myself and acknowledge them, to push my concerns aside for the survival and safety of others who were hurting me or making me feel uncomfortable. I put everyone first, and not Olivia. From times of confusion and doubt, self-hate, suicidal thoughts, and the fake smiles, I now get to eat the fruits of those labors. A sense of purpose and confidence, motivation and strength and persistence. And now the reason to give others that safe space that I gave myself and that my mother gave me, and the support and other family members have given me, and this moving through talking about it. I want to leave off today with saying that no, my story is not as abusive or traumatizing or long lasting as other people's. But if change and growth is going to be made, all stories must be told. I will never ever compare my story to anyone else's, because we don't fit in the same shoes, but I can definitely walk alongside you. You have the power to drop your burdens and see yourself succeed at all costs. Don't let it stop you, man. Like, don't push away your potential for the sake of somebody else. So if you are looking to put this down, like, you're hearing this episode, or in general, you're just like, I want to do something about this inside of me. Hey, yo, write it down. Use voice memos if you want. If you're comfortable with that, draw it out. If you don't want to, speak to somebody, but if you are, speak to someone. Find someone you trust and that you're comfortable with talking to, or seek help if you don't trust anyone, in your family or, your friends. And honestly, there's like a rise in social media platforms that literally focus on mental health, on becoming therapeutic resources and outlets that promote and create a whole bunch of collaborations with like yoga classes and meditation. I actually just started every Tuesday a free meditation class from an Instagram account. So if that sounds like something that's of interest for you, I am going to be creating a story highlight on Highlighting the Black and on Polymoos that literally posts all the Instagrams I'm finding that focus on, that are mental health advocates. And if you have any suggestions, or if you know any, send them on over. DM me. Again, my links are in the show or in the description. And there's so many outlets that are accessible now for us, that are being created by people of color, especially. So go over to those platforms and try to see if you can find one that can be helpful for you. Please let me know if this episode was valuable for you, and if you learned anything from it, or you gained anything from this. If you do end up doing your own exercise, I love to know. I'd love to see how it worked for you. Much love sent to all of you, and thank you for taking the time to tune in to Highlighting the Black.
I should be like you, Mel.
B is made and produced by Mel V. Find him on all platforms, and produced by Mel V.